Hey, Jimmy, you know what?
Yes.
Can I start? I had an idea.
Please, by all means, take the reins.
So, I love Easter so much.
Okay. I'm not laughing because it's funny.
Why you're laughing at me?
There's a way that
Jimmy doesn't let me start episodes. Okay, welcome to Clearly. Jimmy and Kelly here. Okay, we're talking about
talk
Easter.
to me, babe. They're not even here. They're just
What?
me and you in this moment. Say what you need to say.
Well, I don't think many people know this, but I love decorating for Easter. Most people decorate their whole houses for Christmas, and I always feel like, why are we doing that for Easter? And I don't want to decorate with bunnies
Eggs.
and eggs. I'm like, no.
Resurrection eggs, though. Christian eggs.
Anyway, all that to say,
You do it right, though. Our house is currently lined. All of our entryways to our entire living room, kitchen, bedroom area is lined with sparkly, twinkly lights right now.
There's little LED lights.
It's magical.
We happen to have little arches, and so I feel like it reminds me of the empty tomb, which is why I do it.
Oh, look at you. I didn't even get the
You didn't
spiritual
know that?
analogy. No, I didn't even get
I've
it.
said that to you before. We're talking about this because this is Easter week, and we wanted to cover a couple episodes about these really
content of Easter,
significant things that happen. We give a lot of attention sometimes to Christmas and not to Easter sometimes. That's at least my perception of the culture. But
it's certainly of the culture. And here we are, the week of Easter. And of course, what precedes Easter is Good Friday. And we wanted to do some thinking about Good Friday with you because the death of Jesus, obviously preceding the resurrection, is... it's the death and resurrection of Jesus, the heartbeat of
right.
Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many rich things to consider about the death of Jesus in particular. We're going to do an episode on the resurrection here soon as well, because there's so many things to explore there. But there's so many things to talk about when it comes to the death of Jesus. I mean, like, and maybe we should spend an episode on this as well, but like, what was Jesus accomplishing on the cross?
Right.
Is a universe of literature has been written about that.
Yes.
You know, what is the atonement? What did it do? Is it an atonement or
Right.
is it something else? Like there's so many, I mean, over 2,000 years of church history, there has been an Orthodox position, but there's been various other positions out there, and they've definitely grabbed the attention of lots of folks. So anyways, there's lots of, it's a complex topic. It's obviously a central topic. You can't go make your way through the New Testament. You can make your way through one book of the New Testament without bumping into the cross. And so it led us to kind of think about, well, what is an important question that we could explore that would be helpful about it? And here's the question that we wanted to look at with you today. And the question is this. Is this going to sound weird? Maybe. Who killed Jesus? Yeah. I don't know. Not that I don't know. I don't know who... if you have thought that before, or if you're like, what do you mean? It just says right there, those guys did it. But it may surprise you that topic is a hot one. Mm-hmm. There are many hot takes that are hot about it.
You can't even consider right now as you're listening, like, how would you answer that question?
I asked my kids today.
What did they say?
Really good answers. Yeah, I was like, let's go, theology. Right. I loved it. Yeah, I was proud of that.
Yeah, but you might think about, like, if you had to, like, answer that on a test, right? Who killed Jesus? What answer would you give? And, you know, my question to you, Jimmy, would just be, you know, why do you think it matters to even consider the question and consider how we answer it? And if there's right or wrong answers, what's at stake? Why care about a question like this?
Well, how you answer the question, I think we'll see this maybe in these next minutes. It connects us to a lot of issues that aren't just cerebral issues. It connects us to thoughts about God and his nature and what he does or doesn't do. How closely linked is he to something as terrible as the murder of someone? Not to mention the only innocent someone, only righteous someone in the whole universe. It connects us to issues like how you answer who killed Jesus is going to connect you to issues even having to do with your own suffering. Right. Like, how do I make sense of the pain and struggle and suffering that I go through? And what relationship does God have to that? Mm-hmm. I think it also is, it magnifies what was accomplished on the cross for us to get this answer right. I think simple, unthoughtful answers have led many people to just conclude that the death of Jesus was a morality play unfolding, that he, there's like, speaking of atonement theories, there's the like moral example theory of atonement, that Jesus was just setting a good example of how to give your life for another. And you can actually get there intellectually if you have the wrong answer to this question: who killed Jesus?
Yeah.
If your answer is really simple and unthoughtful, it can lead you to some really poor places that won't make the triune God beautiful. And if there's anything we're about, it's adorning the beauty of our triune God and what he's done for us. So we wanted to answer it.
Yeah. Well, even as you're talking, I'm thinking of, isn't it Jesus' conversation with Pilate where he's kind of like, look, I can, your life is in my hands, essentially. Like
Pilate said that. Yeah.
Right. Like, I have the power to
Jesus
take
was
your
like,
life. And Jesus
JK.
is kind of like, no, not really.
Yeah.
So even that's getting at this question of who's the decisive factor here in Jesus's being alive and then being dead.
Yeah.
Like what, Jesus telling his own disciples, do you think I could not call a legion of angels right now?
Yeah.
It's like, so there's clearly a lot more happening in this particular moment of this person's, Jesus' life ending than is at stake in any other moment.
And I think, this just goes to show you that there's this line in a Caveman's Call song: most things true are simple and complex. There's a simplicity to the gospel and what Jesus did on the cross that even a child could understand. And yet there's a complexity to what happened at Calvary that even the most brilliant theologians are still wrestling with the implications of, and how it works in the inner workings of things. And so this is a great occasion, just before we answer, to just go, don't be scared of complex stuff. There's treasure there. There's treasure in them there hills. I don't know. That's probably a quote from a movie, but it sounded right in that moment.
Okay, so how would we answer the question?
I've got four answers.
Let's get going.
I got four whodunits
Okay.
about Jesus' death. Who killed Jesus? Here is the first answer I would give. Here's the first person or set of persons. The people who killed Jesus. Killed Jesus.
Thank you. That's not very helpful right now.
No,
Clarify
I mean that.
Clarify.
I mean the most obvious thing, that the folks at the time of Jesus' death who were there with hammer and nails and all of the workings
Romans,
to get him there, the Jews and the Romans.
colluding together.
That's right. This is we'll just stay here for a second because this is the most obvious thing. If you knew nothing about Christianity, you could at least say this was a fact of history, that the Jews and the Romans colluded to kill Jesus Christ. Matthew 27, it's all about the crucifixion, and the players are there, right? Pilate and Herod and the centurions in Rome and Caiaphas and the Jews and the Sanhedrin, all those guys are there, and they're there in Mark 15, and they're there in Luke 23, and they're there in John 19. So all the Gospels is there. And then if that wasn't enough, you get a little reminder of it again in Acts 2:23, where it says that he's talking to a crowd of people, and he says, this Jesus, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. So you got lawless men. He's talking to the Jews here. So it's people who were there at the scene of the crime, right? The guy with the smoking gun killed Jesus.
And the Jews also, who didn't physically do the killing, have a moment where they're like, let his blood be on us.
Yeah. Well, and they're shouting, the crowd is shouting, crucify him. So this is that collusion thing. It's like without the Jews instigating Pilate, Barabbas would have been killed and Jesus would have been set free. But the Jews cry out, crucify him. So all of these groups of people were in collaboration to bring the death of Christ about. That's obvious. And that is the simplest way to talk about it. But of course, it's more complex than that, and more rich and awesome and awful and beautiful and compelling than that. Here's
person number two.
Here's culprit number two.
There you go.
I think it's also right to say the devil killed Jesus. Now,
Where are you getting that from?
I just made it up.
Oh,
I'm kidding. I would go to Luke 22:3-4. It says this. I don't know if you guys remember this. I like reread it a while back and was like, I can't believe I didn't realize how big this was. It says this. Then Satan entered into Judas, called Iscariot, who was of the number of the 12. He, Judas, went away and conferred with the chief priests and officers how he might betray him to them. So Judas goes off and he colludes with the chief priests, and he betrays the Son of God, and then all the events unfold. But prior to that moment, it was coming. It was on its way, right? But prior to that moment, the Lord of Darkness,
that's crazy.
Satan himself, says, enters Judas. I don't love the language of like possession,
Right.
but whatever it means to you that the devil would enter a person, that's what happened with Judas. And then motivated by that, whatever that is, he goes and does his thing. So we know that even though it proved to be Satan's undoing, Satan was for the killing of the Son of God.
There's a whole fun little trails we could trace right there. Talk about Satan being stupid, which is one of my favorite. Isn't that a C.S. Lewis line?
We talked about it a few episodes ago.
Right. It's like, let me try to accomplish the thing that will destroy me.
That's right.
And also, I find it interesting that the thing that's motivating Judas in the earthly sense in that moment is money.
Yes, greed, yeah.
So just that should warn. There's so many warnings in the Bible about money, but that becomes another one in story form. Yeah.
So
Satan has a role to play.
The Jews and the Romans, the folks who were there, culprit, Satan filled Judas, and then Judas went off and did his thing. And now here's where it gets even more complex, and I think the gospel begins to start shining out more, because I think the third culprit to who killed Jesus is us. We did. You and I killed Jesus. Now, in what sense? Well, we weren't. Right. I didn't have a hammer. I wasn't there. But if what Jesus did on the cross was bear the sins of the world, and I'm a sinner,
whose sins are paid for,
then he bore my sins on the cross. Without my sin, if there was no sin, there would be no need for the crucifixion of the Son of God. So in a very real sense, we participated in the crucifixion of Jesus de facto by being sinners. So this is all through the New Testament, and the Old Testament. Romans 4:25, Jesus, he was delivered up for our trespasses and raised for our justification. Or you go Old Testament, you think Isaiah 53:5, but he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. There's verse after verse affirming that no, in fact, the reason Jesus was up there was us, right? He died for sinners and for sin. And that's an awful, awesome, weighty thing to think about.
Yeah, it makes me think about what we're doing with our kids this Easter season with the putting sins on little pieces of paper and then putting them with Jesus, in the tomb, because it is like that's the occasion for the death, and that's why death is needed. That to absolve from sin, blood is required. I'm reading through Hebrews right now, and so that's kind of a theme you see through the book of Hebrews as it's trying to connect this atoning sacrifice Jesus made to these Old Testament pictures of sacrifice where there is sin, blood is required, and for there to be blood, there has to be death. So death is required to pay for sin. So with our sins become the why of the death.
That's right.
Which is a really crazy thing to think about. All of our sins being, lumped onto him. We know it's true, but, thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mind-blowing thought.
And not only that, but retroactively, the sins of the Old Testament
Right.
we read about in Romans 3 are cast forward onto Christ.
Right.
So Christ is the focal point of the sins of humanity.
Right.
David's sin was ultimately bore on the cross.
Right. The David Bathsheba
My
moment.
sin was
Right.
bore on the cross. And so in a very real sense, it's appropriate to say, well, who killed Jesus? Well, I killed Jesus. That would be a fitting way to talk about it. So the Jews and the Romans killed him. Satan did. We're kind of moving further and further into the more controversial territory. Who killed Jesus? I killed Jesus. You killed Jesus. And then the coup de grace of them. There's a final answer, and I think it's the most offensive, and it's the one that there's most even sometimes disagreement about is that after all of those, the ultimate person behind it, if you can believe it, according to the Bible, is God himself, God the Father, was behind the murder of Jesus. Now, you can imagine that sentence says it all, doesn't it? Because in terms of why a thing is controversial.
Right.
Because you typically don't, just if you're new to this whole Christianity thing, you typically don't want to mingle the living God with a conspiracy to murder. It's just not a great, it's not a great look for him. It doesn't seem to fit who he is. And so
this is why entire podcast episodes are all about people like us saying things like this and going, can you believe people believe this? And, tearing Christianity apart because of these kind of conversations.
Yeah, totally. It's
very controversial.
I have had seminary professors who have written books about this not being the case. So it's even within Christianity, there is debate. But I think the more I've come to the text of the scriptures, the more I am confronted with the fact that this is true. So let me just do the scriptural work for you. Yep. Let's have you be mad at the Bible first, and then you can be mad at us second. Is that fair? Okay.
That's fair.
Kelly, it's Pam! It's Partner Appreciation Month.
It's Partner Appreciation Month.
Also known as Pam. And if your name is Pam and you're one of our podcast partners, that's a double Pam.
Oh my gosh.
Pam.
We could not do Clearly without our partners. So the month of April, we are celebrating our partners.
That's all I got.
With so many things. We're doing a hangout just with our partners later this month. We have a special text thread just for our partners. We're doing giveaways.
We got a giveaway. It's so big, we can't even tell you what it is because we don't know yet. It's going to be amazing. Access to all of our live recordings, which we love having you guys on with us. We're giving away our Clearly one-pagers that we're consistently making to help you get in God's Word. That's all free to you. But most importantly, we love that we get to be a part of this movement with you to help folks see Jesus clearly in his word. You see what I did there?
I brought the word in.
So thank you, partners.
Thank you.
Pam, we couldn't do it without you.
You couldn't do it without the month? Partner Appreciation Month?
Don't overthink it. God killed Jesus. Now I'm going to unpack that a little bit, but here's just some verses to think about. Okay? Acts 2:23. This is Peter talking. This Jesus delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God. That Jesus you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. So we read the verse earlier. Who killed Jesus? The Jews and the Romans did, right? By the hands of lawless men. They died. Right. But there's a cause behind the cause.
Right.
Right? And that was the definite plan and foreknowledge of God. That Jesus was delivered up. Or Acts 4:27 and 28. For truly in this city there were gathered together against your holy servant Jesus. Listen to this language here. You're going to hear a lot of the players show up. There was gathered here in this city against your holy servant Jesus, whom you anointed, both Herod and Pontius Pilate, along with the Gentiles and the peoples of Israel. So there's number one, right? There's the crew. To do whatever your hand, God, and your purpose predestined to occur.
Mm-hmm.
So just think about, let your head
Yes,
swim for a
yeah.
moment. Everything that Pilate, Herod, the Gentiles, and the people of Israel conspired together to do against Jesus for his death came about because God's hand and his plan or his purpose predestined that thing to occur.
Mm-hmm.
So the bad guys aren't off the hook. Like
Right.
Pilate was wrong.
Right.
Herod was wrong. The Jews and the Gentiles were wrong, and yet there was an agent working behind it
Mm-hmm.
that was not wrong, and yet was the ultimate cause of it.
Mm-hmm.
This is in the Old Testament, Isaiah 53,
That's
right?
That's what comes to mind for me. It pleased the Lord to crush him and to put him to grief. I don't know if I'm quoting it
It
verbatim.
pleased the Lord. The Lord was pleased to crush him, putting him to grief.
Right. Which is the craziest sentence ever. Yeah, it's a very complex, there's a lot of emotions that are there that are confusing sometimes. Like, how can it please God to put his son to grief?
Yeah.
And yet, when you are the beneficiary of said crushing, it also communicates, it's a valuable statement as well, because we know that behind that is the accomplishing of a great good that we benefit from. But God knew, God knew what was happening.
And not just knew.
He wasn't reluctantly going into it.
Yeah.
There was a plan.
He ordained
foreknowledge. Yes, his purpose, his hand, his pleasure.
You can't, what else can you say? Well, you could say, could we go so far as to say, like, okay, you might stop there and you go, well, yeah, but he didn't get his hands dirty per se. It wasn't his hand on the hammer. Okay, here, I'm just going to challenge that, because I engaged with a verse in Colossians recently. I haven't heard many people talk about when they talk about this issue, but I find it really compelling. Just listen to the logic of it, okay? This is Paul writing to the Colossian church. He says this in chapter 2, verse 13 and 14. You're familiar with it, I'm sure. When you were dead, Colossians, in your transgressions and the uncircumcision of your flesh, he, God the Father, made you alive together with him, God the Son. So when he brought Jesus to life, you came to life.
Mm-hmm.
He, God the Father, did this, having forgiven us all our transgressions, having canceled out the certificate of debt consisting of decrees against us, which was hostile toward us. So there was a certificate of debt. The things we have done wrong,
Mm-hmm.
God dealt with that at the cross of Christ, having canceled it out. Listen to how he did it. He canceled out the certificate of debt, which was hostile toward us, and he has taken it out of the way, that certificate of debt. Listen to how. Having nailed it to the cross. Who's the he who nailed it to the cross in this text?
God. Yeah.
God the Father nailed our certificate of debt consisting of decrees against us, which was hostile toward us. There was a nail that went through Jesus' hands and feet. And when it went through his feet, it also pinned our record of wrongs and offenses to that same tree as it pinned Jesus to. And this verse, say what you want about it, but this verse says that God the Father, in pinning those decrees to the tree along with Jesus, he did it. He pinned it.
Right.
That the nail went in because of him.
Right.
And I find this remarkable. How comfortable the Bible is getting God that close
Right.
to literally the most wicked act in human history.
Right.
Right? Name a worse crime that's ever been committed.
Right.
And yet here we have verse after verse after verse that's saying, in the end, the primary, supreme, predestining, foreknown, and planned mover of the death of Jesus was his Father. and it was the most evil act in human history.
Mm-hmm.
So at a minimum, what you should feel now, it would be weird if you didn't feel a tension.
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Well, what you just said, the Bible is more comfortable with that tension than we are, which is why people don't like it. We are not comfortable with that. It feels, we don't like a version of God that has that much of a hand in moments like that. Maybe in this instance, yes, because we are the beneficiaries of this horrible act, but that has implications of what that means for other moments in human history. So it's doing something that you see throughout the Bible all the time, that God is both. It's dealing with this issue of sovereignty, which is maybe coming up for some people listening. It's like, oh, this is getting to that topic I don't like. Yeah, it is. It's hard. Of God being having a plan that involves humans who it's like, did those people have free will or not to choose to do this or not? If God had planned and predestined it, that becomes the tension, right? If God is sovereignly doing a thing, then how can those humans be responsible? And I think that tension exists through the beginning to the end of the Bible, that the Bible is a yes to both. People are responsible and God is sovereign. And it's not either or, it's both and our brains kind of explode a little bit when we try to figure out how that unfolds. But the Bible, like you said, is very comfortable with both those things being true. And people in the Bible, like a lot of those prayers you read, a few of those are, one is I think in a sermon and one is a prayer. The disciples are praying. It's like the people freshly filled with the Spirit don't have a problem with it either.
That's right. You're just naming one tension. Right. I mean, you named the tension of how does human responsibility and God's sovereignty work together? Is Pilate responsible? Was Caiaphas responsible? Was Judas responsible? And the resounding answer to the Bible is yes, they were responsible. Yes, they were judged guilty for it. And also, God was intimately involved, predestining all of it to occur exactly to his hand and plan and measurements. So both of those things are true. So a big yes to one, a big yes to the other. That's one tension. But then the other tension is, did God just do something evil? Right. Is God a mob boss who is sending his lackeys out to knock off somebody, right? And his lackeys get pinned with it, but God's sitting, high up in the mansion going, oh, it's not me. And I think that's how some people feel. And this is why some Christians even, I think, avoid this, because that seems to be the implication. Right. So the question is, how could God, it's clear that God is involved in this. So the question we've got to solve in the final analysis is, okay, but how can he be involved in the worst act in human history without himself being evil? That's the question. And I don't know how you would answer that, but as I keep searching the scriptures, the thing I keep coming back to that the Bible says about this is that he can be involved in that and he not be guilty of that sin. And the difference, and the reason is intent. Now, I get this from a number of places, but I think the clearest one is an example we see all the way back in the book of Genesis with Joseph. We love this verse, many of us. Joseph and his brothers, and they sell him to slavery. All the stuff unfolds. Really hard life, imprisoned for a while, no good, but then he rises to power. It's an amazing story. And then he confronts his brothers in the end of the book of Genesis, and he has that famous exchange with him where he says to them, you intended it for evil, the throwing me in a well and selling me as a slave and fill in the blank. Horrible stuff done to an innocent person. You intended it for evil, but God intended it for good, for the saving of many lives. Not God repurposed it for good, but the very thing that you hadn't intended for something bad, God actually was generating all of the same things, but his intent was different. He was intending to rescue people from famine, to save the lives of the folks living in Canaan and Egypt. He was involved in good things through a bad act.
Right.
And if you have a tolerance for that, I think that is the answer for us at the cross.
Well, and another question would be that another answer maybe to this is not God's triune nature another answer to this tension? Meaning, yes, it pleased the Lord to crush him, the Father crushing the Son, but also they are one. And so it's not even true to call it murder as much as self-sacrifice, right? That though, and this is getting into the triune nature of God that also confuses us. Like, how can there be one God, one what, three who's? We've talked about that, right? And how does that play out in this particular moment in human history, right? That yes, Jesus is dying, the Father is not dying, the Spirit is not dying, Jesus is dying. And yet the Father and the Spirit and the Son are one being. Yeah. And so in a way that kind of makes our minds explode, as Jesus is dying, God is dying. And yet it's the Son that's dying, not the Father. So there is different acting agents within the Godhead, but it is a moment of self-sacrifice more than it is of...
Because there's only one triune God. Yeah. And you're right to bring this up, that this was not like some people have claimed in history, divine child abuse. This was the Father and the Son glad and grieved as they moved toward the cross. Right. Do you remember what it says in Hebrews? For the joy set before him, he, Jesus, endured the cross, despising its shame, and is seated at the right hand of the Father. So Jesus approached the cross with a type of grief. We saw that in the Garden of Gethsemane. Lord, Father, if there's any other way, let this cup pass from me, yet not my will, but your will be done. So willing, humble participation and a view to the thing that's being achieved on the other side of this is so lovely, so joy-bringing, that I will endure the cross. And in the same way, I think that's what's happening in the Father's heart at the cross. He is not murdering his Son. From the Father's vantage point, this is atonement, this is sacrifice, this is an innocent absorbing the taking on the sins of the guilty, and then being punished accordingly. And the Father sees that, and there is no way that he was only pleased to crush him. It wasn't that the Father was pleased to crush him, like Isaiah said, and that's it. There is a type of pleasure in the crushing that looks past the crushing to the thing the crushing is achieving. And we know this is how God operates because we see it in all kinds of places in the Bible. Lamentation says this, though he does not afflict willingly or grieve the sons of men. He does not afflict, the Hebrew says, from his heart, that he can afflict without loving the affliction itself. Yeah.
Well, and this is one reason to read all of the Bible, read all of it, because as you read through those books of the Old Testament, those first 5 books that are hard in the early part of your Bible reading plan, reading about the building of the tabernacle and the sacrifices and the priestly garments and all of that. But as you read that, and then as you read Hebrews is all about the cross. It is all about the moment of Jesus on the cross. And yet the way it talks about it is as if Jesus put on priestly garments and is entering the real tabernacle, that the one we read about in Exodus and Leviticus is just a copy and a shadow of. And it's giving all this imagery to this gruesome moment in human history, but that's actually really lovely and beautiful, like you just described, that there really is an amazing moment of he is entering, not having to make atonement for himself because he has no sin, but able to come into the real throne room of God, not the shadow of it, with all of our sin, and once for all, through his flesh being torn, create a way for us to be reconciled to God again. And so I feel like the book of Hebrews, if you want a good read for the Easter season, it's like read through the book of Hebrews because it's really adding beauty and it's kind of drawing our imagination up into like this heavenly tabernacle scene that we know that from the scriptures is what's happening on the cross. So, as humans, we're just seeing this really gruesome thing that is gruesome. It's right to call it that. It is the most wicked, evil act that's ever happened. And yet the triune God, the way that they see it, is more like the book of Hebrews. Here's what's happening. As Jesus adorns the priestly garments and walks into the heavenlies with all our sin on his back, to make a way for sinners to be right with him. It's really lovely. And to see a God who would willingly go, I'll sacrifice myself for that good thing. When you are the one who gets to benefit from it is like, yeah, it is amazing and a comfort, I think, to know that the plan of salvation is not, oh, we hope that the right things come into place at the right time, that the people we love might be saved. It's like, no, it will, because I planned it.
God's accomplishing
I will
exactly
accomplish
what he
it.
intends.
I will do it. And I feel like even that Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane is an admission of God did it.
Yeah.
Because Jesus knows what's coming. He knows the future. Like he sees a future coming that he is sure is ahead of him, which is why he's grieved, because he knows what it will cost him. And, let this cup pass from me. It's like that reference to cup is this reference of the cup of wrath you see through all of the Old Testament. It's not just, we sometimes lose the meaning in that, but like there's a cup of wrath stored up for sinners that Jesus is going, I will drink it.
Yeah.
And he knows it's coming. It's not a maybe.
Yeah.
It's a certainty. And he is hand stacked with the Father to accomplish it and to see it done.
That's right.
So it is a team. It is a team effort.
Yeah, that's right.
And
I think one other thing that kind of touches down right in the center of our practical lives is what this means for even our suffering, because we're all, in various ways going through it. And if you're not right now, you will. And if you're a Christian, this actually has profound implications for how you're going to endure the next time there's a breathtakingly hard moment introduced into your life. Because if the Lord can meticulously plan the most evil act in human history without being guilty to bring about the greatest good in human history, then surely he can have a purpose in the evil that is showing up in your life and my life in a way that is bringing good in us and through us and for us as well. If he can do that, if he can navigate the cross in a way that it looks awful and horrible and yet brings about the brightest light ever, the greatest good ever, then surely the next time that diagnosis comes, or that life is lost, or this job is gone, or that person leaves, surely my God is able to navigate that in a way that is going to produce my everlasting good as well. And we see this in Romans. That's what he says. He works all things together for the good of those who love him. And the only way I even have a category for that being possible is he did it at the cross. And if he could do it there, he can do it anywhere. And that's, I think, such a massive comfort for us as Christians. Yeah.
We hope that episode was helpful for you, but we also know it's getting into things that are hard and uncomfortable and some tensions we're not always used to dealing with. And if you're ending this episode going, Jimmy and Kelly, that was not helpful, I have so many questions, then we want you to go down to the show notes. We're going to link several other episodes that we have covered similar topics, similar ideas that we just heard about. And we think that those will be really helpful for you as you continue to explore some of these tensions, some of these things in the scriptures. So we'd encourage you to go there to find out just find some more help for you as you're journeying. And you can always send us a question at question@clearlypodcast.com. Write to us. We'd love to hear from you and hear your question and respond. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll do it usually live on air with our podcast partners who we film before on Zoom. And if that sounds cool to you, like we can do this whole thing in real time, ask questions, answer questions, interact, have a hoot and a holler, then you can be a podcast partner with us as well. Just head on over to patreon.com/Jimmy Kelly Needham and team up with us. It not only helps us make this content, but it gives you access to all the material that we make, from our Clearly one-pagers to inside access to these episodes. It's a really cool thing for everybody involved, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. Yeah. Share this episode, smash that like button, subscribe, pass it on. It's yes, just slam your finger down on it. And until then, we'll see you next time.
See you next week.